Good afternoon. This is yours truly, Ken Campos, here in the San Diego Lodge. And I'm here at the lectern. I'll be introducing our speaker today. And the first thing is to welcome everybody. Thank you for showing up this afternoon for our weekly event. Our speaker for today, Laura. So please go ahead and take it away. So the reading today, this is the New World Order here, so Monica is not doing the readings. So I'll do that today, and each Saturday it'll be the Q&A person at the end. We'll also be at the beginning. So from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, on page 91 in our ULT version. My devotee, who is free from enmity, well disposed towards all creatures, merciful, wholly exempt from pride and selfishness, the same in pain and pleasure, patient of wrongs, contented, constantly devout, self-governed, firm in resolves, and whose mind and heart are fixed on me alone, is dear unto me. He also is my beloved, of whom mankind is not afraid, and whom has no fear of man, who is free from joy, from despondency, and the dread of harm. My devotee, who is unexpecting, pure, just, impartial, devoid of fear, and who hath forsaken interest in the results of action, is dear unto me. He also is worthy of my love, who neither rejoiceth nor findeth fault, who neither lamenteth nor coveteth, and being my servant, hath forsaken in interest in both good and evil results. He also is my beloved servant, who is equal-minded to friend or foe, the same in honor and dishonor, in cold and heat, in pain and pleasure, and is unsolicitous about the event of things, to whom praise and blame are as one, who is of little speech, content with whatever cometh to pass, who hath no fixed habitation, and whose heart, full of devotion, is firmly fixed. But those who seek this sacred ambrosia, the religion of immortality, even as I have explained it, full of faith, intent on me above all others, and united to devotion, are my most beloved. And now with that, we'll proceed with our speaker for this afternoon.
So welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining in our discussion today. I hope that the screen is showing up as it should. Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. And welcome from the other side of the globe and New Zealand as well for the Hamilton Lodge. It's lovely to have you with us tonight. We are considering today Noetic Discipline. And we can see in the slide there a quote from Hermes, which is most intriguing. And it says, a character broad in vision, generous in sympathy, deep in motivation, firm in the degree of deliberation, is the self-created product of thought, ranging from calm consideration to continuous meditation. This takes into account that it appears that our noetic discipline changes as we evolve, as we grow. So that's something interesting to consider. And the voice of the silence opens up with the instructions for those who are ignorant of the dangers of the lower idi, the psychic faculties. And the footnote further states that there are two kinds of psychic faculties. And this we can see maybe in the diagram there at the beginning, in our first slide, where you have the golden orb of light, then you have the lower orb, and then you have in the middle an overlapping that is occurring. And I wonder if that might be what the voice of the silence is indicating when it says there are two kinds of psychic faculties. One is the lower coarse psychic and mental energies, and the other is one that exacts the highest training of spiritual powers. So maybe the psychic forces that are under training are those forces that are overlapping with the golden orb that we see there. But interestingly enough, in the glossary, HBB indicates that these same psychic energies or cities, she calls them attributes of perfection, phenomenal powers acquired through the highest training of spiritual powers. So it seems this psychic nature could be our friend as well as our enemy. The difficult here stated is the personality, the lower id, which causes us to see the supreme as different and separate from ourselves. When we think that we are our likes and dislikes, desires, body, and its senses, we do not take up their training, but live according to those attributes, taking our identity from them. So, what finally takes us to the position between these two forces? The position that is stated in the Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna standing with Krishna, surveying the two armies. If we have cultivated any sense of discernment, we will find that the conflict is not outside of us, but within ourselves. But if we do not have that discernment, there is no effort of self-reflection. So the first step of Noetic discipline is to discern the real from the unreal, the qualities within ourselves of courage, forbearance, unselfish service, up against the temporary likes and dislikes and desires, which constantly change throughout life and leave us, as the voice of the silence says, a weary wreck. The first feeling Arjuna has in this position is that of despondency. He or we throw down our weapons of noetic discernment, not wanting to fight against our desires, likes and dislikes. They have been our friends, but they have also been the cause of our suffering and the makers of karma. Therefore, as Arjuna comes to realize, he or we must pick up those weapons of our higher nature and use them in the training of those the training of our psychic nature to express the spiritual side of us. And nature and karma will compel us to pick up those weapons. And this is the cultivation, as I said, of the psychic instrument through the noetic discipline or spiritual training. We have here a quote from Mr. Judge's Ocean of Theosophy. The most intelligent being in the universe, man, then, has never been without a friend, but has a long line of elder brothers who continually watch over the progress of the less progressed, preserve the knowledge gained through aeons of trial and experience, and continually seek for opportunities of drawing the developing intelligence of the race on this or other globes to consider the great truths concerning the destiny of the soul. These elder brothers also keep the knowledge they have gained of the laws of nature in all departments, and are ready when cyclic law permits to use it for the benefit of mankind. They have always existed as a body, all knowing each other, no matter in what part of the world they may be, and all working for the race in many ways. And we see in that, I chose the lotus there because we all know in the secret doctrine that the lotus is used as a symbol for the awakening of that higher self, the awakening of the real man on the surface of the water. To be in the world, to help others without being of the world, is the aim of this process of noetic discipline. It is, as Mr. Wadia says, the living the life necessary for the acquirement of spiritual knowledge, or, as Robert Crosby says, to so become constitutionally incapable of a selfish act. And who better to help us on this journey than those who have already gone through all that we are now experiencing, our elder brothers. Like all journeys, our becoming must begin with where we are right now. And as all of us are in different states of being and have different awareness, no exact course of action can be given. Krishna, after showing Arjuna his true nature, he teaches him the laws of periodicity and karma and the unity of all life, tells Arjuna that he must act as seemeth best. In the Key to Theosophy, HPB emphasizes that our evolution now is by self-induced and self-devised effort. We are not made or created, but become through effort, just as a musician or an athlete in their field must train each in their own way. We have the same tools, the higher forces, but how we use them is our own. Our elder teachers all have their own higher personalities, their unique instruments of service. The aim is one, but the paths are many. In beginning where we are, we can take up the same aim as our great teachers, each in our own unique degree. And from Mr. Judge, we have here his great mantra, which many of us will be familiar with. Let us hit the mark, O friend, and that mark is the indestructible, the highest spiritual life we are at any time capable of. Noetic discipline, as the mantra suggests, is the highest thought possible. That will be different for each member of our humanity. This is why in the Declaration of the United Lodge of Theosophists, it states, it regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization. As Jonathan said at the talk by Journey on the unmanifested and the manifested, each of our talks weaves into another. Likewise, all efforts to lift up the mind, heart, and body of the race exemplify the one true aim. The Noetic discipline is to stay in the unmanifested while manifesting, to see the manifesting as a temporary adjustable form of the changeless unmanifested. To be karmaless is to see the two as one, to draw up the psychic to express the noetic, as in our first slide. This, as the reading from chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita indicates, is the using of the personality as a tool to act in harmony with all beings. It is the leaning back on Krishna, the self, and leaving the results to law, to continue the process of adjusting the external to better express the self we are coming to realize. Could we consider that the meaning of karmalessness is a perspective, state of mind, where we are constantly adjusting our psychic nature to reflect the noetic, with no attachment to results. It seems like such a tall order, but by degrees it is possible. All the teachers throughout the ages have shown us by example. An adept is a master of the sevenfold nature, and he becomes so by self-effort. They are not created, but have gone through the very same work that we are now experiencing. They have achieved that goal either in this cycle or in a previous Manvantara. Here we have a quote from The Voice of the Silence, and it speaks of stepping out from the sunlight into shade to make more room for others. The tears that water the parched soil of pain and sorrow bring forth the blossoms and fruits of karmic retribution. Out of the furnace of man's life and its black smoke, winged flames arise, flames purified that soar onward, neath the karmic eye, weaving in the end the fabric glorified of the three vestures on the path of the path. Carl Jung said, when we look outwardly, we dream, and when we look inwardly, we awaken. Can this be applied to our passage from the voice? To give up our life to truly live is to sacrifice the animal in us to the noetic self of all. Of course, we must cultivate and care for our instruments of body, mind, and spirit, but too often we find ourselves indulging them rather than using them. Is the stepping into the shade, the letting go and going within? Is it the beginning of using our instruments rather than indulging them? That we give up our endless wants and desires? To go within and awaken must, on the external plane, look like a stepping into the shade. In the actions of our daily life, it would appear in the form of being a good listener, of truly considering others, and of helping all around us in thought, deed, and feeling. There is a lovely saying that for every flower we plant in our neighbor's garden, a loathsome weed disappears from our own. We are to grow spiritually, unconscious of our own progress, not as temporary personalities, but inwardly as eternal pilgrims. This is an aspect of devotion to Krishna, where we lean back on karma and let law take care of the results, while we continue in the process of removing the selfish impurities throughout the current and all our future personalities. Even in this very moment as students, we have all chosen to consider these ideas. This in itself is a noetic action. We made a conscious choice to take up our lower nature and apply it to this evening's contemplation. And this in turn will provide threads for further choice and the unfolding of noetic discernment. To transcend our limitations. One learns to transcend the limits of the physical and material self, understanding that the true self is not confined to the body. This leads to the paramita path, the path of virtues, one of disciplining the psychic nature to reflect the noetic. We start with the senses. Is what we feed the senses of a noetic quality? Good thoughts, good reading, good service, with our mind always tuned to saying and doing what will be of benefit to those around us. Again, the stepping into the shade to make more room for others, putting aside our opinions to listen and speak in ways that bring about the truth which lies hidden in each moment and in each being. What do we watch with our eyes and hear with our ears? Do we listen and see with non-judgment, with charity, patience, and kindness. All these take us beyond our current limitation, and all these qualities represent our inner senses. The psychic and noetic forces create a friction within and without. And at times in our evolution, they create a rupture, a fragmentation. The golden thread that will repair that rupture is the recognition of our non-separateness. So while we firmly apply our understanding of the higher principles, we do not separate from those caught in the psychic storm, but ever stand ready to help to the degree we can, just as the great teachers stay to help us. In times of trouble, look globally for all those trying to help and work with them. This is especially brought to our attention today by the rupture we see in the fabric of our humanity. To hold fast to the highest thoughts, while aware of the psychic energy enfolding the manas of our race, we can always get ready for what follows the rupture. What comes is more than just a repair. It is a creative opportunity to further the spirit and mind of the race. And this is applying noetic discipline to the rises and falls of the cycles. What we think and feel matters. And when in the midst of the turba around us, it is important to hang on and exemplify or have faith in the noetic human potential. To repair the ruptures around us, we, as Raghav Nair stated in his book Parapolitics, we must liberate ourselves from internal compulsions. As long as we act by our lower psychic compulsions, humanity will always need outward constraints. With the help of our higher self, standing with Krishna, instead of reacting to the conditions, we move our consciousness and actions towards a universal point of view and action. In this rupture, we see many doing just that. There are many of our humanity are setting examples and working in a universal way to help others and alleviate suffering. So, it's wonderful to see that in times of trouble. And as Mr. Rogers said in his famous quote, he says to parents to help their children in times of trouble, like what we see now, he said, to tell the children to look for those who are helping. This is a most perplexing quote. Something maybe we can consider in our question and answer period here. The self of matter and the self of spirit can never meet. One of the twain must disappear. There is no place for both. And in contemplating that this week, I found it very perplexing to understand, as the higher must see through the eyes of the lower. So what does it mean that one must disappear? If we go back to the image at the beginning of the two circles overlapping each other, one of light and one of dark, maybe the way of looking at this is that the two must become one. That either we will lift up the lower psychic nature to express the true self, or, as the voice of the silence says, we might be tossed about by the fierce winds, chased by the gale, and drift into eddies and disappear within the first great vortex. So it seems that we have that choice, that we can lift up the matter to express the higher nature, or we can get lost in that great vortex and have to begin again in our evolution. HBB in The Secret Doctrine states that nature, the physical evolutionary power, could never evolve intelligence unaided. She can only create senseless forms. The lunar monads cannot progress, for they have not yet had sufficient touch with the forms created by nature to allow their accumulating experiences through its means. She says that it is the Manassas Dianis who fill the gap. They represent the evolutionary power of intelligence and mind, the link between spirit and matter in this round. So it appears we have a job to do, a duty to perform, something that we must give in regards to those beings more aware of us and those beings less aware. We are a link in an endless chain of being. This image shows that a process is taking place between spirit and matter. We know that spirit and matter are two aspects of the absolute unknowable, but it is still perplexing to think they can never meet, and one of the two must disappear. Noetic discernment is a recognition of the impressions we leave within matter and around us. As Mr. Judge says, every being or form is made up of an aggregate of intelligences on 7 planes. Every thought and feeling we have impresses those intelligences and which accumulate and gather into form. And so with mindfulness and meditation, as Hermes states, we must be aware of our thoughts, and when they are not of the impersonal universal nature, we transmute them, expressing a more altruistic position. We see altruism in our humanity as a sacrifice to the needs of another. And again, we must look here at the sevenfold nature. This touches almost in every talk that we have. You know, the upper triad, spirit, spiritual soul, and human soul, or Atma Buddhi Manas, and the animal soul, the Kama Rupa, the astral body, Linga Sarira, the vitality or the prana jiva, and of course our body, the rupa. And we cannot speak of noetic discipline without considering our sevenfold nature. The spiritual training spoken of earlier is to so purify the lower material self, our body and our desires, so that it can reflect the noetic spiritual self, so that it can radiate through the 7 principles. It is sometimes known as spiritual emancipation, not the kind of emancipation that takes us away from the world of illusion, but an emancipation that allows us to be in the world without being disturbed by its changing nature. Near the beginning of the Voice of the Silence, we are told that we must hear the voice of the higher self in 7 manners. Then, mastering each, we must make them one and lay them at the master's feet. That master in the Mahayana school is the self of all that lives. So, like the musician, we must harmonize our 7 instruments to the nature of universal brotherhood and sisterhood. And of course, we don't leave out the elements. Mr. Emoto, a Japanese businessman and photographer, brought to our attention the effect of our thoughts on the elements of water. From his images, let's consider what is said in the Light on the Path. me draw up that quote. The path is found. Make yourself ready to tread it. Inquire of the earth, the air, and the water of the secrets they hold for you. The development of your inner senses will enable you to do this. Inquire of the holy ones, of the earth, of the secrets they hold for you. The conquering of desires of the outer senses will give you the right to do this. Inquire of the inmost, the one, of its final secret, which it holds for you through the ages. The great and difficult victory, the conquering of the desires of the individual soul, is the work of ages. Therefore, expect not to obtain its reward until ages of experience have been accumulated. The use of the inner senses is the realization first that we are not any changing thing. We are more than the mind because we can change it. We are more than our feelings, for they too change constantly. We're more than our desires, for we can change, control, and manage them. And the same is true for our body. We can see in the water crystals the power we have to lift up matter to a noetic expression. By accepting the karma of our past and working with it, not by getting away from the errors of our past, nor to escape its clutches through atonement, but by taking hold of those waters and creating new harmonious forms. The same lives that we have impressed with the same lives that we have impressed in the past. Sorry. Having difficulty reading the quote there. Can anyone read the quote for me on the slide?
I can, Laura.
Thank you, Shobha.
We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Thank you.
Okay.
Evolution is beginningless and endless and involves forces well beyond our current temporary personality. But it is through the personality or forms that we occupy that we gain experience. Every form we create in the process of becoming must be let go of, like the sand mandalas painstakingly created by the Tibetan monks and then brushed away. Noetic discipline is a process that expands as we evolve in awareness. Noetic discipline deepens as we evolve. What is noetic discipline for the great teachers is far beyond what we as humanity take up as noetic discipline. Its full fruition requires a complete knowledge of man, nature, and the cosmos. To work with knowledge and wisdom within the cycles of reincarnation and karma. There are beings in our awareness whose noetic discipline is so finely tuned and sustained as to make our manifestation and experience possible. In mythology and ancient writings, these great beings are often symbolized as trees, sustaining the forest and providing shelter to all the lives around them, renewing themselves in service to all. Trees have so much to teach us. Being like a tree is mentioned in the Bible. It says, "They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit." But what is really like to be a tree? Trees are charged with a life force. They capture and transform terrestrial energy from the earth below and cosmic forces from the sky above. They are like columns penetrating the celestial and earthly realms. They bring vitality and life down into the earth where it is anchored. In our daily life, we too can transform through noetic action to provide shelter in times of drought. So instead of looking for our teachers or gurus, we can strive to be like them, to take up the same work to the degree that the hit the mark mantra indicates. And when we take up their work, they will take a step towards us. So, Shobha, if you could read the last quote for today from The Voice of the Silence.
Sure. The divine discipline. Restrained by thy divine, thy lower self. Restrained by the eternal, the divine. Aye, great is he who is the slayer of desire. Still greater he in whom the self divine has slain the very knowledge of desire. Guard thou the lower, lest it soil the higher. The way to final freedom is within thyself. That way begins and ends outside of self.
You, Shobha.
Hey, welcome.
There is no failure if we keep trying. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate that presentation on Noetic Discipline. I'm reminded off the bat here of an article from the Theosophical Tenets that here at the Lodge we had studied some time ago called Psychic and Noetic Action.
Yes.
And I just wanted to double check with you about Blavatsky, HPB, Helena Blavatsky's use of these words, that the psychic really, in some sense, connected to the spiritualistic, the mediumistic, and you might say maybe the lower aspects of our quaternary nature. And the noetic both have to do with mind in some sense or another, but it's like the lower mind or the lower personality, and the noetic would be the higher, something that might be revealed more by intuitional activities, sort of more of a divine knowledge. Is that ring true here in what we're talking about today?
Yes, for us at our time right now. But I often think too that the psychic has everything in it, good and bad. You know, that even, when we read about that HPB saw her master for the first time in the physical body while in London, which means she must have seen her master first on a different plane, maybe the astral plane. So that it seems that plane has its higher and lower qualities. That as the much of what we read in that wonderful book that you referred to seems to indicate that we can train those psychic energies. So, give them that highest spiritual training. So they are our friend, but our enemy. That's the thought that comes to mind.
Yeah, there's that duality.
Yes.
Going back to that initial reading in the Bhagavad Gita that you sent for us, there's that indifference between the hot and the cold, the higher and the lower, the enemy and the hero, you might say.
Yes. Well, it's like Mr. Crosby says, to become constitutionally incapable of a selfish act. That must mean that our inner life is so purified that we wouldn't even consider doing something selfish. So that indicates that the psychic nature, as the diagram the image at the beginning of our slide presentation indicates, that it can be raised up
Fantastic.
So thank you.
That's very optimistic. Well, let's go to our first question from the audience. I see a kitty cat and Dr. Judy Salzman. Judy, why don't you go ahead and unmute and let us know your
Okay, thank
question.
you, Dr. Ken. Thank you, Laura, for a very illuminating talk. I was thinking about that Venn diagram at the beginning because it says to me that some higher manas have lower manas and some lower manas have higher manas. I mean, in the average person, we have to have our lower manas. I mean, we have to do our everyday tasks and do our income tax and such. But
Yes.
without any kind of higher aspiration, we're really empty. We're lost. We have no real vocation. We have no spiritual aspiration. We're like a lost soul. So, really, um, the task of man seems to be to purify that diagram and get rid of any control the lower manas, like selfishness, has over us. But the problem is, it's so difficult to do it. Noetic action, service, knowledge, devotion will help, but ultimately, what is going to help get rid of those lower tendencies? Because they're in all of us and they've had to be for a while, but we can't control us. Do you agree with this?
It is hard to control, and as Arjuna throws down his weapons because it does seem overwhelming. And I look at our poor humanity right now, and especially many who are suffering with addiction. And I wondered today if maybe is Arjuna throwing down his weapons, refusing to fight, letting the lower forces overwhelm them and more overwhelm us too with our addictions. Because it is difficult to take up those higher qualities of charity, love, compassion, patience, calmness, all those inner qualities that would have no visibility on this globe. Those noetic qualities would stay up in that beautiful or golden orb that we saw. They would stay up there. They'd have no vehicle.
To eat. He
They would
just ran
have
over there
no
and then he
place
ran
to
over
land
here.
on this earth. So what we're doing,
Shake the cat
as the
treat or something.
quote, yes, Judy,
Sit.
as,
Ray
so
Bell
what
just
we're
came to see
doing,
me.
hi. So what we're doing, Judy, is like the quote from The Secret Doctrine, that we are the link between spirit and matter. That the spiritual noetic action can have no visibility on this plane except through humanity, except through man. So, that seems to be very important. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this?
Yes, thank you. You're right.
Yeah.
I'll jump in here from the lodge, Laura. Yeah, this is a fascinating topic, that distinction between the higher and the lower manas. On the one hand, the psychic part of our personality, and the higher. And going back to that one slide you had of the infinity sign, the snake that was kind of wrapped around it, talking about the two parts that would never, of self, that would never meet. The self that was like the lowercase self, as it were, and then the capital case self. I'm
Yes.
thinking that distinction might be echoing the idea of the individuality and the personality, and that those two, even though, like in the Venn diagram at the beginning, which I actually thought was a partial eclipse, it's actually the psychic and the noetic Venn diagram crossing each other. So we have that shape in the middle, which also has a symbology to it. But I'm wondering if that's the part that doesn't meet the transient personality that dissolves when our life is over. The persona of the kin here, the body, the mind of kin, versus the individuality of which I'm representing, you might say, and that is the two parts that don't meet.
Thank you. Yeah, that's You know, when we go back in the talk there was times when, let's see if I can remember, that the personality is what prevents us from seeing that we are one, that we are spiritual beings, that we get caught up in our personality and our lower nature, and we think that's who we are. And so we do not make any effort to lift up that personality beyond any kind of physical degree. You know, we might choose to become great scientists or great musician or a great being, but we don't take up that spiritual training because we're so identified with the personality. So it's only when we can get beyond the personality that we can begin to spiritually train our psychic nature, it would seem.
Yes, and would you say that what you're talking about is what HPV refers to as the delusion of separateness?
Yes.
This delusion that we're separate beings.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's interesting because the spiritual training requires that we act for and as the self of all, that we have to embrace non separateness, that we can't train our lower instruments without all the other beings in nature and in our humanity. So, you know.
Absolutely. And Laura, we have another question from the lodge here. Let me bring
Okay.
to the election.
Hey, Laura. Sorry about the camera being weird. And maybe you can fix it.
Oh, is it?
That's too low.
It's too low. Okay.
Well, you referred to, first of all, it's just a really hit the mark kind of a presentation. So thank you for that. You were talking about in one of your points that you were making about how the manifest and the unmanifest. And I think you were saying that you want to be so familiar with the unmanifest and so rooted in that or so grounded in that, that's kind of the plane that you're coming from, so that when a person disciplines the manifest or does spiritual practice and spiritual training, that somehow it's really coming from this higher place. I was wondering if you could kind of talk about what that would be, is to becoming. So what's involved in becoming rooted in this, in the unmanifest?
Yeah. How to describe what is involved in that? Well, it involves in killing out the personality, you know, that we begin, once we realize that we are not the personality, then it's our job to make it into an instrument. As the beginning of the voice indicates, the higher self must be heard in 7 sounds. How does it describe that? We must hear the voice of the higher self through the 7 sounds, which is the sevenfold nature. And then we have to kill those 7 sounds, make them into one, and lay them at the master's feet, that's my paraphrasing right now, which is the master, of course, for this student at this time is the self of all that lives. And so we have to take that sevenfold nature and make it into one instrument and put it to service the higher self. So if we think we are the personality or the manifested, then we can't do the job. We won't even begin to take up the task, you know, that of doing that. So, and you cannot raise the lower with the lower. You always have to move up to a higher plane of discipline in order to raise something up.
Thank you very much.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, really.
If there's any gaps in my presentation, please speak up because I'd love to fill up any gaps that I've left.
And you want to?
Yes. It says here.
That's beautiful, Chair.
Shobha,
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Oh, we have a question, Shobha? Coming? You're still muted there.
Sorry, did somebody else have a question? They can go first if somebody else is
I
there.
think you're up.
I'm the only one here. Okay. I was intrigued by that quotation you asked me to read, Laura. By the way, it was a beautiful presentation. Thank you so much, Laura. I don't think there were any gaps as far as. I mean, I need some clarification. That quote that you made me read: "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." You know what I was thinking of? The fact that in this evolutionary journey, we were once stones, we were once long, long, long ago plants, then we became animals. And then when I look at all these kingdoms, they follow the laws of nature and live lives that do not involve this strange thing that we have called the manas, right? This
yes.
lighting up of manas, which allows us to think for ourselves and invariably digs us into a hole, right? So I think what it is we've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten our past. We've forgotten our history. And so we are in this muck that we are in, and that makes it doubly hard. So I think this is telling us we're already spiritual. We have gone through all this. So we should be moving fast. But somehow or the other, we seem to be stuck in this mud.
Think of that idea of thinking of the personality in regards to like the Mandela. In other words, we're not trying to enlighten this particular personality, but through this personality, we're gaining experience, and that we have to brush it away at the end. Because as you indicated, that we have gained experience through the form of the stone, the plant, the animal, and now here we are as self-conscious beings. And as eternal pilgrims, this isn't the end of our journey. We've got much so we have to use our personality, not indulge it, use it in that idea of service to others, and it's kind of like the lotus coming up through the water, and then it opens. That water is like that psychic nature that we keep incarnating into. And so we gain experience, and that comes out through the secret doctrine quote as well, that in that psychic journey that we are taking as spiritual beings, we are gaining the experience that will eventually open up on the surface of the water.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Laura, and Shobha, that interchange. I'm sure many of you have heard this saying, no mud, no lotus.
Yeah, no mud, no lotus. That's right.
We need that duality of the lower psychic to give us something to have experiences with as we go through lifetime after lifetime, incarnation, on what HPB calls the obligatory pilgrimage. Laura, thank you again for this amazing presentation and the different aspects you brought in. I like how you sprinkled throughout it different bits of advice of what we can do in our day-to-day life as students of Theosophy. Things like focus our attention on altruism, to allow ourselves not to be so reactive to things happening in the world around us, the psychic world of other people, places, things, circumstances. And even in the 12-step world of Alcoholics Anonymous, they say, we're troubled by not being able to accept people, places, things, and circumstances. And we have to, even that brings us to some equanimity. And in that long quote from it's not that long, in the quote from chapter 12 from the Gita, Krishna is advising Arjuna to really be patient and to be devout, to be self-governed, to be, to have, I guess you might say, many of the qualities of the paramitas And then there's this one resultant thing, which I think it's a little confusing to me. In the voice of the silence, it's listed as a paramita, and that's the raga. But then other Buddhists say that it's actually not a paramita, but it's a result of practicing the paramitas. And I think you also touched upon elements of the Eightfold Path, and they have right thoughts and right action and right speech as part of our homework of things that we can do on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis as students of theosophy to achieve the aim of your discussion here, the Noetic Discipline.
Thank you,
Beautiful.
Ken. You know, there are so many scriptures and devotional books to help us on this journey, and each one gives us strength in that. You know, that the scriptures give a voice to the human journey, give a voice that we are taking as spiritual pilgrims through the psychic realm of the human nature and the personality. And it gives us strength. And, you know, there's, as you mentioned, the Dhammapada, the Eightfold Path, the Light of Asia, the Light on the Path, the Bhagavad Gita, the Voice of the Silence. All of these should be read together and applied to our daily life. They're very helpful. So thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. And thank you for giving us those little tidbits of what we could do in our day-to-day life. It was a good thing.
Yes, yes. You know what we have to, it seems that as HPB's quote from The Secret Doctrine says, that's our job to do, that these higher realms cannot touch the earth except through the mind and our humanity. So we have a job to do. We have a work to do. And so and we're kind of slow. You know, it is said that we're behind in that work of raising up matter. So, but we have to start where we are.
Yes, I'm very optimistic. And I see
Yes.
that from David Grossman. You have a question or comment?
Question. You mentioned light on the path. You know, it tells us how to go about things. One thing it says is to kill out ambition.
Mhm.
But then in the next breath, it says, act like those who are ambitious. So what does that mean?
What do we think? To
Right.
kill out ambition.
And to act like those who
To
are
act like
ambitious.
we are ambitious. That's right.
Right.
Well, one of the thoughts that come to mind, David, is that it seems that our enthusiasm and our ambition as students of theosophy is aimed towards something for which this personality we now occupy will not see the result. Now, that's interesting to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that sort of, well, that kind of puts a damper on our ambition when you think that I'm not going to see any result for my efforts here, right? In this personality called Laura. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
But I have to be, as I said at the last sentence, that there's no failure if we don't give up. So that's where our ambition has to be. It has to be in the eternal, not in the temporary world. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, to me, actually, it does quite a bit. I guess it has to do, brings up the quality we have to focus on of motivation.
Mhm.
So it's not really the action as much as what's igniting the action, the higher self, you know, to help others, say, as an example, or personal ambition.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you think of all the intelligences in the cosmos and all the wonderful beings that make possible our experience today, and then you consider the Kuan Yin pledge, never to seek nor receive individual private salvation, but forever strive for the redemption of every creature under the sun. That's a pretty long-term ambition. It doesn't seem, it seems almost, it has an eternal quality to it.
Right.
Because, yeah, so,
Yeah.
yeah, there's the ambition.
So I guess kill out ambition doesn't mean to kill out drive to accomplish something necessarily that's worthwhile. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, thank you.
Thank
for
you.
that, interchange. I would also, what pops to mind is the idea that is one of the major themes often repeated in the Gita to act, to do your duty. As Krishna is asked by Arjuna, should I act or should I be still? What am I supposed to do? And the answer is to do your duty, to do your action, but to not be attached to the results of the action. So I think for David, that could be another way of looking at the ambition. So you're killing out the ambition as sort of like a code word for the fruits of the action.
Yeah.
Wait, 2 hands up, Ken.
Yeah, now we have a hand from Judy. Judy, take it away.
Just wanted to comment on, I think a light on the path says work as though who are ambitious, respect life as those who desire it, and be happy as those who live to be happy. And so you're no longer working, just to get a job and have a lot of money and power and maybe go to heaven. You're not, living life for sensation and pleasure and power. And you're not living just to be happy. You will be if you do your duty, but you're now working for a higher purpose. And you have to lay everything you do at the footsteps of the Buddha or on the altar of Krishna or on the altar of any deity you choose. But it's got to be for a higher purpose. And that would be a real awakening of the higher manas, I think, or what Plato calls anamnesis. But unfortunately, there's so many people who just think that life is for pleasure and power. And so we're a bit behind. And I know we certainly need to grow up in that fashion. But a lot of people, when I once asked them when I was teaching, what do you think Plato means by anamnesis? And they'd say instinct. Well, of course, that's animal. And we've got to be beyond that. It's not instinct. It's the higher self speaking. So anyway, thank you. Great ideas presented here.
Very noetic. Thank you, Judy.
And I also see a hand raised from Diane. Diane, if you want to go ahead and unmute and have a comment or question. Tell her to unmute. Yes, Diane, go ahead and unmute. That'd be on your control on your Zoom, on your phone. And your,
Okay, now I think I'm off mute now, right?
Right. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I thought I unmuted myself, but I didn't. Anyway, the Kuan Yin pledge was mentioned, and I just can't leave it alone. It just follows me around all the time, and I think it's something worth taking. But I was beginning to think that maybe there's going to be a lot of failures along that line, and that it's a practice ground. We maybe take more than one lifetime to. I mean, we might have to put up with being selfish a few times, and then remembering, oh, the Kuan Yin pledge. I can't be selfish. I have to think of others first. I must never think of myself first, and you must put up with a lot of maybe discouragement with yourself at first. It's like a training ground, I think, to really, I don't know, feel like maybe you've got the swing of that pledge, because it's such a wonderful thing. I just can't let go of it ever.
Well, it's interesting with our failures. They're really going to stand out in our minds for sure, and our feelings. And Mr. Judge says the reason that they do stand out for us is because we're already ahead of them. If we wouldn't recognize our failure if we weren't already ahead of it. So isn't that interesting to think about?
That is brilliant. I never thought of that, but that is true.
Yeah. So we're not to feel guilty or upset about our failure because we've already moved past it.
That's
inwardly. Yeah.
I love that thought. I'm gonna hang on to that.
Yes, yes. And the only failure is if we give up.
That's
You know,
right.
that's the only failure. And it's as I'm sure it came out in the talk as well that you know, we have to go through all these experiences. They're necessary. And because an adept isn't made, an adept becomes. And so we are witnessing our own becoming here. And so there, you know, there's nothing to be lose, as Shobha said, you know, we didn't lose anything when we left the form of a stone behind or a flower behind.
Right.
Or and we won't lose anything when we leave this personality behind. The experience we gained through the personality, the lessons that we learned will never be lost.
That's right. We're not our personalities. We are the individuality that
Mhm.
that attaches each lifetime. Hopefully, we learned it. We've learned something, and if we haven't,
Yes,
we have to repeat it again until we do. And
that's right.
and we shouldn't be discouraged ever. And
No.
but I remember just things went pretty well for me. I had a lot of favorable. I mean, my life has been pretty blessed. I had 5 wonderful children, and everything has always gone so beautifully for me. And then I realized when I broke my hip, and kind of a lot was taken away, and I couldn't walk, and I couldn't go to the beach. I couldn't go hiking. I couldn't do any of the things I loved. But then I realized, well, I wasn't meant to enjoy my life here. I came here to serve, and I was going the wrong way. And that's why that rug, it didn't just, I didn't just slip on that rug and break my hip. That rug was jerked from me.
Yeah.
From
Well, you think of Christopher Reeve when he became paralyzed after falling off a horse, and what he must have experienced when his whole life disappeared from him. But one thing that he discovered, which kept him going, is that he always was able to shine the light of compassion and love. That never left him. That power was still there, and
that
so that's where
that
he.
was his real self speaking to him then.
Yeah.
It felt that, yes.
Yes, I think Eric had his hand up. Is there?
And then we have another question from here in the lodge as well, Laura.
Okay, thank you.
You said Eric?
Yeah, if
Yeah, Eric had his hand up.
if Eric wants to go first, that's fine. If not, I'll do my thing.
Oh,
Okay, I can do
Did
my
you
thing.
have a comment or something to share or question?
I don't see Eric. So let's bring Jonathan to
Took
the.
his hand down.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. So this year we have 6 talks on Noetic. And like next month, or I think they're like 2 months apart. And so 2 months from now, there will be one on Noetic devotion. This one's on Noetic discipline. They started off early in the year on Noetic metaphysics.
Psychology too.
And then the second one was Noetic psychology. Then it was Noetic ethics. Then it was Noetic action. We're up to 4 now. And Laura, you did number 5, which is Noetic discipline. And then number 6 is Noetic devotion. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit in some of them, how they might be related to each other. I realize that'd be another whole talk or like 5 talks. But anyway, it occurred to me while I was driving around, some people think I think too much when I'm driving around, is that perhaps Noetic devotion, which is 2 months from now, is rooted in Noetic discipline, which in turn is rooted in Noetic action, which in turn is rooted in Noetic ethics, which in turn is rooted in Noetic psychology, because it has to do with who we think we are, and then which in turn is rooted in Noetic metaphysics. And I realize that without all of them in front of you, it'd be hard to kind of go through all that. But anyway, I was wondering if you had
We can think of the sevenfold nature. When I think of Noetic devotion, the first thought that comes to mind is Atma. You know, that understanding So the talk on noetic devotion should be maybe could point out how all life is one, that there is no separateness, that so that and of course all the other ideas of noetic action would be the body, the motion of the body. Do we indulge the body or do we use it as a tool?
Yeah.
That comes to mind as well. So there's no end. And the other thing that in contemplating noetic this month, when contemplating it, I came to realize that as human beings, our understanding of noetic discipline is probably far different from what a Dhyani Buddha or a Krishna or one of the great teachers, or even the Nirmanakayas or the let's see, what's the names have gone from my head, but their idea of noetic discipline would be different than ours. It'd be deeper. It would be broader. It would be so that noetic discipline to me is something that's like the circle. Its influence is ever expanding.
Beautiful. Well, Ken, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Give a vote of thanks, as they say.
Yeah.
And tell us what our thing is for next week, please.
Thank you, Ken, for moderating
Yes.
tonight.
My pleasure. I always enjoy being up here at the lodge. I missed the last Saturday, but glad to be here today. I should be here the next couple Saturdays. And Laura, again, thank you again for this wonderful presentation in this noetic series, as Jonathan mentioned, the series with noetic aspects. And next week, on the 4th of October, trusteeship will be our topic. And the Herman's quote is, "For an individual to be a trustee in any meaningful sense implies that he is acutely aware of the unmet needs of others and simultaneously is capable of controlling and transmuting his own appropriating tendencies." So that sounds like a sequel to what you just gave us today, Laura. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you all next Saturday.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, wonderful talk. Yes. Everyone.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Recording will be on that to the cloud.